And we're with Davis Travaglini LLC. We welcome you. Thank you so much for keeping us updated with the court system and everything that's going on in St. Louis area. So please update us. Thank you.
Thank you. I know that Chris is covered for me. Oh, Christine is here. Good. I know that Chris is covered for me for a couple of weeks, and we had a holiday, so it's good to see everybody again. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad we're all back, and I hope you had a nice holiday. Christine is joining us this morning to help us with, she'll probably have a lot of information about St. Louis County.
Or not.
Or not.
I can tell you about my my rants and frustrations about St. Louis County. I'm not sure how much information I have.
Well, you don't need to be online to hear that. You can just open your window and you can hear Christine yelling about how hard it is to get some things done. It's very frustrating. Every day is frustrating as we have things that, just take a long time, or we can't get them done, or there's problems. But when I was thinking back this morning about how far we've come, I had my first Zoom meeting as a yoga class in March, and now we're using Zoom all the time for the courts. We're going to breakout rooms, we're just going. And I think that if we hadn't had this pandemic, we would not have adopted all these things as quickly as we have. So there is a little bit of advantage to being able to figure all this out. I would like to go back to real court, but I also kind of don't want to go back to real court. Chris has been attending dockets in St. Charles and Jefferson County, and he feels pretty good about St. Charles. They're not real crowded. It's a new courthouse. They're up on top of, masks and, things like that. Jefferson County is more difficult. It's an old courthouse. The courtrooms are very cramped and crowded. A lot of the people down there don't wear masks. They don't have a county order to make them do it. And so it's their God-given right to get sick and get other people sick, I guess. But I think those two counties are proceeding more or less normally. Christine, do you know, are they doing evictions, sheriff evictions in St. Charles yet?
I honestly do not know.
Yeah, we'll update you on that next week, but we think they are. I think they are. You may have seen in the paper this week or on TV that they are doing evictions in the city. The sheriff started posting notices last week, and they've been doing evictions this week. They got, there's been demonstrations at City Hall about it, trying to make LIDA stop the evictions, but it's not really LIDA's deal. This is the courts. And we've talked before about the difference between, the executive branch and the judicial branch. The evictions are under the judicial branch and under the courts and the sheriffs to decide when they're going to do them. So, of course, if you look on the Post-Dispatch website, and I think maybe on some of the TV stations, you can see stories about the, oh, it's horrible, we're doing the evictions, and all these people complaining about it. And I had to just sit on my hands so as not to go on and type in a comment that would have been not favorable to the protesters. But, some of the evictions that they showed pictures of, the people had moved. The landlords had no way of telling. And our experience is, for the most part, unless it's a really horrible tenant, the landlords are willing to work with them and make payment plans and that kind of thing. The evictions that have been going on in the city this week are ones where judgments were taken before the shutdown. So those people did not get behind because of the shutdown, at least not initially. And they've been sitting there with free rent, and no consequences for months. And some of them probably are getting the enhanced employment benefits. None of that's going to the landlord. I know that the city and the county have funds to help people and to stop evictions and that kind of thing. And I think it would be smart for them to arrange for those funds to go right to the landlord, because the tenants might not use them for this. They use them for other things. There was also an article this week about how rents are going up. Well, yeah, if you can't evict out the people who aren't paying, and it's difficult to figure out if they're even there or not, there's going to be less units available. So you can charge more for them. So if you're marketing units right now, you might want to test the market a little bit and see if you can raise your rents a little bit to make up for the problems that you're having with, maybe your non-paying tenants that you're having trouble evicting. And I don't know if I told you guys this before, but I think this is hilarious, and they are doing it. In St. Charles, one of the judges out there had told me he had went to look at the family arena for having jury trials, and they are doing it. They are doing jury trials there in the family arena in St. Charles. I'm not 100% sure if any of them have started yet, but that's what they're planning on doing. In the city of St. Louis, I was talking to a friend of mine who's a judge down there the other day, and she has the next 2 weeks criminal jury trials coming up in her division. And they're not sure if they'll get enough jurors to show up to even be able to go forward with that. Apparently, the public defenders don't want to raise the speedy trial right, but they're also afraid to be in courtrooms with these big jury panels. The thing about the city is they have courtrooms that are pretty large, some of their courtrooms. So I think it's still going to be a trick for them to do this and do it in a safe way for everyone, but they are planning to start criminal jury trials. I have been told by judges in both the city and the county that we won't get civil jury trials until probably next year. And we understand that. The whole jury trial thing is a massive time consumer to figure out how to do it safely. And under our Constitution, there's a speedy trial right, especially for people who are confined. And so those things have to go first. I'm going to turn it over to Christine for a few minutes so that she can curse at you about what's going on in the county.
Well, I won't curse at them. I just feel like as far as St. Louis County, that they're really not moving forward like we're seeing the other counties. We still cannot do sheriff executions. There is still a stay order that I'm not really sure is going to be lifted anytime soon. We're not given any kind of criteria on what the presiding judge wants to see happen before that's lifted. So I can't even give you any kind of, oh, we need to wait till we get to this phase or see this or not see this before any of that will happen. So right now it's still, there's a stay order and he's going to lift it whenever he feels like lifting it, kind of thing. I'm getting in court on the cases that I can file. I have not as quickly as I did before and not as quickly as I would prefer. There's still 4, 5, 6 weeks between time I'm filing and time I'm getting court dates. So that's a little bit frustrating, but at least we're getting in there. But then I get in there and I'm able to get a judgment and then I can't do anything with it because they're not doing sheriff executions. So that's a little frustrating as well. We're doing trials by Zoom video. I have my first trials set next Thursday. So it'll be interesting to see how those go because I haven't had a trial yet. And I'm trying to think what else. I know I got an email this morning from an attorney with Arch City Defenders that he is opposing counsel on a landlord case that I have actually set for trial next week. And he just found out that they're getting CARES Act money to help renters. So they somehow have access to some funds that are going to help pay for some of this rent that's owed. And I feel like at least going through an organization like that, we know that any money that's going to the tenants or for the benefit of that is going right to the landlords to pay for rent. So that's promising. I'm not sure how much funding they're getting or what the criteria is of how it gets paid or done, but it's something. Let me think what else. They talk, St. Louis County, I believe, is still considered to be in phase 1. I don't think that we'll quite move into phase 2 yet, just because there has been a recent positive for corona within St. Louis County. I don't know if it's a deputy that is in another building than the courts, or if it's a deputy with St. Louis County Police that's on the street, or what the situation is. But what we've been seeing is the presiding judge isn't making any determination with regard to whether it's in the actual courts building or not to move to the next phase. If it's in any St. Louis County court, the police, the administration building, the Justice Center, any St. Louis County building, if there's a positive case, I think he's using that as reason not to move forward as far as phases. What I feel like we're better with the Zoom right now anyway, in that I can get more cases heard. Once we move into phases, all that's going to do is then say, okay, we're going to limit the number of people that are allowed into the courtroom. And I think in the initial phases where people can come back into the courtroom is only like 10 people or 20 people. The courtrooms in the county are much smaller than the city even. And I think we're going to be going backwards if, okay, you can come back into court, but you only get 10 cases on per day or hour or whatever they're going to do. So I'm hoping maybe as we move through those phases that there's still the option of we can do Zoom, and then if you can't access Zoom and you need to come into the court, then you do that. But at least I hope we continue to use Zoom in that we have more cases that we can get through and get heard. So we're coming up on the moratorium, on that CARES Act moratorium expiring. That expires July 25th. So if you're a covered property under that CARES Act provision where you weren't able to file because you were deemed a covered property, which means you have a federally backed mortgage, or if you receive any kind of participate in a subsidy, Section 8, LIHTC, any kind of subsidy program with the tenant, you were prohibited from filing for 120 days from when the act passed. So that deadline expires July 25th. You are then required to send a 30-day notice to the tenant. We're recommending that you send it July 25th, July 26th, right away, because that notice has to be sent to the tenant, giving them 30 days to get their balance paid in full. And if they don't, then you are permitted to proceed with filing suit. So there's going to be a very large number of filings. I anticipate the end of August, beginning of September, because all of the complexes, apartment complexes, they've all been prohibited from filing. And so if no one's been paying the rent and they're still not paying, which I think is the case on the majority of them, there is going to be a huge influx of new filings. And I'm not sure how that is going to play out with causing more delays or what have you. I'm able to file and get court dates, but they're limiting the number of cases on each court date. So we'll see how that plays out. So I anticipate, honestly, that we're not getting back into the courts what could be for the rest of the year. I talked with a judge in St. Louis County yesterday, and the way things are going and looking, it's not going to happen anytime soon. So we kind of are just then advising the clients, whatever you're doing now, if it's working, continue to do it and work with these tenants, and hopefully we can get through it without too much damage. But if not, if you weren't able to file before, you will be soon, and we can move forward. It will take time. And especially for St. Louis County, just because I can get into court doesn't mean I can get them out if they don't lift that sheriff order. So that's been a major frustration. And I voiced that frustration to at least my judge. And I think my judge gets it. He just, his hands are tied. He can't do anything either. He gets it. And you know, I'm considered a bulk filer, and there are other bulk filers who file. And I think the judges are talking to all their bulk filers to hear what their frustrations are, so that that can all be passed on to the decision makers. And so that's all we can do at this point. That's all I got.
Okay.
Well, I feel like it's really good that we're getting to have some trials next week in the county. We have several trials set on Thursday afternoon, and Christine and I are both going to be on the Zoom call for that, so that I can take defendants into a breakout room and try to negotiate with them while she's trying, you know, other cases. We have, you know, I think do we have a pretrial order from the judge about what we have to submit?
Not yet.
Okay.
That was one of the things that I had talked to my judge about earlier this week, because I hadn't gotten anything yet. And it almost seems, I think they were trying to get a consensus of what every judge, associate circuit judge in the county wanted, so that they'd have one uniform order. But I don't think it's going to end up going that way. I think each judge has their own preferences, and they're kind of leaving it up to each judge about what they want to do, how they want to do it. And so for now, I don't have any kind of order. It's just, I'm trying to at least send the other side what I expect to use as exhibits for trial, which in a landlord case is usually just the lease and the ledger. So at least I can provide that to them before, so they're not having to look at it on a screen. But there's no requirements at this point as far as any order, at least for my division. That's not true for every division in the county.
They're smart, I think, to start with us with the landlord cases, because we do generally have just a couple of exhibits and that kind of thing. You know, when they started doing these Zoom and WebEx dockets with instructions sent to the unrepresented defendants to tell them how to dial in and call in and everything, I wasn't sure they were going to be able to do it. But they've adopted to it pretty well. You know, they do call in and figure out how to get there. A problem has been that if you have a big docket with a lot of them appearing remotely, it can take a while before you can get to them, and you know, their batteries die and that kind of thing. We don't like to just let them wander off into the ether. We wish they would stay logged in, but you know, on some of the dockets, we've been saying you can call us, and you know, an attorney will be available to talk to you. There's usually, you know, 3 of us on all these big docket calls so that we can take care of these people. But the trials are going to be interesting because they don't understand the trials when we're in person. They don't understand how the exhibits work, and you know, when they're asked if they have an objection, and then they start telling their story, and that's not a legal objection, and you know, we go through all that. I think that's going to be a little harder to do remotely. Fortunately, the judge can mute people, which might become necessary. But I think if they think they have anything that they want to put in as evidence for themselves, they're going to have a harder time figuring out how to do it. And I wanted to say something else about the city that Chris has managed to get, and I'm very grateful to Chris and Christine, both of them, for how the great relationship they have with their judges, which is making it easier for us to, you know, get things done. And that the judges really trust them to, you know, do the right thing and show up and be prepared and all that kind of thing. I will tell you that some of our fellow attorneys are not doing that, and it's very aggravating. But Chris has gotten some in-person trials set in the city for next week for the expedited evictions that, you know, we talk about them as the drug evictions or the 441 evictions, but basically the evictions where the tenant is causing a huge problem and has to go. And so we're very pleased that we're getting accommodated like that. I'm nervous about Chris, you know, going to court with people there, but, you know, we're trying to take precautions. We bought big boxes of cheap pens so that we can take pens to court and the tenant can just have them. So if they touch them, we don't have to touch them back.
Mhm.
So
I think
that,
they've got, I've heard Chris mention that, at least in the courtroom down there where he'll be going, I think they've started to put up plexiglass. So
that's good,
it's
yeah.
going to protect them a little bit more. I mean, I'm sure they'll be required to wear a mask and go through all that. But I think that they've got plexiglass set up too, to kind of help with the social distancing and what have you. So
Mhm.
and we're gonna
I'm
do great-
just encouraged that he's allowed to proceed with that and do
Yeah.
that, because that's something that they're doing things in the city that I'm not getting those same benefits I'm doing in the county right now. So I'm happy that he's at least making some progress or that the city's making progress in trying to move
And I think
forward
the
and
presiding judge of the
accommodate and
county,
do what needs to be done.
the
What's that?
presiding judge in the county is being very conservative about
Yes.
moving forward. And I think that they have something from the Supreme Court that every time someone that's been in the building tests positive, they have to move the next phase back 2 weeks.
It's not even in the building. That's what I was saying before. He is basing it on any building that is a St. Louis County building. It doesn't even have to be in the court that will affect it to go back or not move forward. It is any building in St. Louis County. He's being very conservative.
Very
He
conservative.
is not doing anything.
Well, does anybody have any questions?
Paul wanted to know if you could just briefly repeat what the sheriff order is. I imagine currently.
Oh, okay. The sheriff in the city, the sheriff is doing evictions. So you know how these evictions work. We have to get a judgment first. So the initial evictions that the sheriff is doing in the city are from judgments that we got, January, February, March, that never got processed before the shutdown came. And so when they do the eviction, they first go out, and they were doing this last week. They were posting properties with, you have 5 days left. They have a notice they post. And then this week, starting on Monday, they had scheduled evictions with landlords. And what they do is they go to the unit, they check it for guns or drugs. And if nobody's there, the landlord changes the locks, and it's up to the landlord, and they're protected by the law as to disposing of the items. And if there's people in there, the sheriff makes them leave. And that's what's been going on this week in the city. In the county, the sheriff is not doing that yet. Christine, are we filing executions in the county?
I've been filing since March. I mean,
Yeah.
nothing's changed. I continue to file because I'm allowed to file. They just don't do anything with it. They're accepting my filing, which is just acknowledging that I filed it so it can be date stamped so they know the order that all these have been filed, but they're not doing anything else with it as far as, because what they would normally do after acceptance, because everything's electronically filed, is assign it an execution number, make sure I paid the sheriff fee when I filed the execution order, and then send it back to me to bring to the sheriff, and then the sheriff calls to schedule. Well, they're not doing that part of it at all. They're accepting them to know who filed in what order, and then that's just how it's going to stay until the judge lifts the stay order. And then once that stay order is lifted, they're going to go back and take all the oldest filed first and start issuing them an execution number and sending them out to the attorney or the landlord, if it was done pro se, to get it to the sheriff so the sheriff could start scheduling. This is not the sheriff's department that is not wanting to do it. This is all coming from the court.
Yeah, we have been taking the position that if we can file things, we will, just so that we'll be closer to the front of the line.
Because it's just going to get worse.
Right.
So if you've got a judgment that they're not paying and not doing, then that execution order should be filed as soon as you can file it. Because, like I said, I've been waiting for stuff now that I've filed since the beginning of March that And now that I'm back in court, it's just going to get worse. So there was a big period, of course, where I didn't have court, where that number wasn't growing. But, you know, once we went back to court in June, now that number is going to grow because the timing.
We have more
Okay.
judgments now. We're getting more
Right.
judgments.
And it
Getting
will
judgments
just keep
again.
getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anybody else have anything they'd like to ask us?
Wow. That sounds like you've got a lot of work coming up. is
I
what it
know.
sounds like.
Well, we're hoping because, you know, our funds have gotten a little skimpy.
Oh, yeah.
So we're hoping to do some business. We're hoping that our clients all survive this along with us, you know.
Yeah.
John, I had emailed you, I'd forwarded you an email right before we started.
Okay.
So you probably haven't seen it yet, but I belong to a group called Commercial Real Estate Women. And I'm doing, you know, a similar thing to this on Tuesday at 4:00.
Okay.
And anybody can sign up for that. You don't have to be a member of Commercial Real Estate Women.
Okay.
It will be geared more towards commercial landlords.
Okay. That'd be
And
great.
it will probably be information that you guys have already heard from us, you know, before. But if anybody would like to sign up for that, maybe John can post that on your page.
Yes. We'd be happy to do that. Thank you so much, Kathy. We'll be happy
Yeah.
to share that. Yes. That's very
And
good.
I know that Michael's going to want me to ask this because he's been helping me. So people go on Google that I've evicted and they're not exactly giving me 5 stars. So my Google rating is terrible. And I was really we would just kind of laugh at the people who would say I was a child of the devil and not think about it. But Michael has convinced me that I should be paying better attention to our ratings and everything. So if you have the opportunity to go on Google and search for Catherine Davis, Christine Travaglini, Christopher Bosler, Davis and Travaglini. John, can you unmute Michael and let him tell
Yeah.
what would help us?
Michael, there
He'd
you
be
are.
grateful for the help. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the deal. I've been doing a lot of kind of research. Christine, you have 1 review. It's 5 stars. So good for you.
Thank you. That's good.
Catherine, I believe you have 12 or 13 reviews. Some of them, I mean, I've looked up the reviewers and what they've reviewed, and the ones that are giving you 1 star and calling you whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's clear to me that these are not legitimate reviews. There are people that are upset that they are not paying their bills. So I'm sorry, you know, God forbid we all have financial issues that we deal with, but if you don't pay your bills, you cannot blame the attorney that is kicking you out of your house. It's just not valid. So there are 16 people on this webinar. I am going to, Kathy, with your permission, I am going to put a link that if you would go to this place, click on review, give Kathy a well-deserved 5-star rating. There's actually 3 different, that I found, 3 different places to rate. 1 for Christine, you got a 5 star, so you're golden. 1 for Davis and Travaglini, and 1 for Catherine Davis. So what I'd like to do first is the Catherine Davis one, because that's the one we're having trouble with right now. So with your permission, Catherine, Kathy, I'd like to do that. Is that okay?
I'm very grateful, Michael, for you doing that for us, and for everybody who can go on there and vote for us, you know, or whatever it's called. Yes, I'm not quite as social media savvy as I probably should be. And I explained to Michael that I hadn't done anything about this because I figured people would look at it and realize that those were people I had sued. And Michael said, no, a lot of them will just look at the rating and pass you by. And I thought, oh, that's horrifying, because my firm does a good job, and Chris and Christine are wonderful, and people should use us. Yeah. And the other problem is that because of Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, we can't go on there and like talk about these, respond to these reviews and say, oh, well, this person is a deadbeat, or, you know, they didn't pay, or, you know, whatever. That could get us in federal law trouble. So we've been not able to do that. So we're counting on our friends to boost us a little bit.
we can do it.
Okay, so I'm gonna post that right now. Kathy, you and I need to talk about what is allowed and what is not allowed, because I'm not familiar with what the Bar Association does. I've just posted that in the chat. Please, everyone. There's obviously 3 people, well, 4 people. Actually, I haven't written a review yet for you, Kathy, so I need to do that myself.
Hey, Michael, can you send that to me on an email too, so I can spread it out through the group?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because this will go away once the meeting ends.
Oh, you're right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
Right.
please send it to me on a private email if you don't mind. It doesn't have to be private. Everybody's got my email. But just send it to me, and I'll be happy to spread it out, because a lot of people do watch the replay, and that way I can also post that on the replay. So we
Please
have
make
that.
sure, even a 4-star review hurts us, quite
No,
frankly.
5.
Yeah, it's got to
5.
be a 5-star review.
And they deserve every bit of it.
Well, absolutely. I mean, they're giving away such great information and keeping us all updated on all of this. It's got to be a 5-star review in order to negate the other ones that we're trying to have removed. But Google's a funny, I'm not sure what. But what happens is people go to Google, see that Kathy is 2.7 or something like that, and then they move on. So there's all of these strategies about how they don't read the reviews. No one reads anymore. We all know that, right? Except for attorneys, thank goodness.
We read them here and laugh.
I know, but it's, you talked about, we want to get you more clients because you deserve them, quite frankly. Just all the information you're giving to all of us for free. Anyway, I'll stop my rant.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you.
And John,
Of course.
we do
And
appreciate
Christine will work on getting you more 5s, and then Davis and Travaglini will work on getting more 5s for that. John, tell me your email address, please.
Yeah, best one is AMS, like Apple Mary Sam, 826 at yahoo.com.
Okay.
AMS 826.
Yep.
Yeah, if you
Okay.
just send that to me, I'll make sure everybody gets it.
I'm going to send you an email to please just copy and paste.
Okay,
In other words, please rate.
fine.
Okay.
I'll get it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything?
Oh, we do thank you, Kathy and Christine, very much so. And
We're grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah, I just wish I sometimes have better
Yeah.
news to report, but we're happy to give any information and help that we can.
it's always
Yeah,
very
I go-
helpful, though.
I go in and say to her, "Are you going to join the call with me today? I think it'll be good." And she's like, "I don't have everything there to say as chair."
I keep waiting for the day I'm going to have all this great news that I can spread.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
very helpful. We do very, very much appreciate it.
Okay, you
Thank
guys stay safe. We'll see you next week.
Thank you
Okay.
so much. Everybody have a great week and weekend.
Thanks.
Later.
Alrighty. Bye.
Bye.
Bye now.